Hello, my name is Murat Özbilen. Since 2014, I have been working with agile teams in non-IT projects, such as new product development in home appliances, cost-cutting, route to market, organizational change, and so on. So here I would like to share some of my learnings in non-IT agile projects. According to dictionary, agile means able to move quickly and easily. As all of you know, the agile project management methodologies are originated in the software industry. In fact, these agile methods were derived from JAD, or Joint Application Design, which was developed by Arne Lind of IBM Canada in 1980s. Then starting in early 1990s, agile methods have been formalized. Crystal method, Scrum, DSDM, FDD, extreme programming, and so on. And finally, in 2001, Agile Manifesto has been published. Then it became a popular word. However, if we look further back, we can see that managing projects in agile way is not a recent thing. Some of you may already know that one of the earliest agile projects had been applied by Lockheed Martin on building U-2 plane in 1950s. The methodology they called was Skunk Works. In fact, at the original time when it started first, it was not written with U, not S-K-U-N-K, but it was with S-K-O-N-K, Skunk Works. Well, in Skunk Works, teams composed of a small number of people, around 20 people, who frequently work after verbal or unwritten agreements with the customer. Does it ring a bell? Small group, verbal agreements? I guess so, right? Kelly Johnson was the person behind Skunk Works. He had a very specific idea how to manage his teams, and his motto was, be quick, be quiet, and be on time. He became famous then for the management approach known as Kelly's 14 rules. In fact, there was also 15, but he dropped the last one later on. And here are the rules, these 14 rules, which I display right up there. If you read those rules in detail, if you really look into those rules in detail, you can read the footprints of 4 key values of Agile Manifesto. And these values are individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software, well, let's call it product, over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. Now, Skunk Work has been applied in some other projects, other military aircraft projects as well. Some of the famous ones are F-117 stealth aircraft, F-22, that's another fighter jet, and also a very recent one, F-35. So these are where these Kelly's 14 principles or 14 rules of Kelly's has been also applied in these projects. So although Skunk Work, without spelling out the word agile, it was clearly following the agile philosophy. Skunk Works was not the only example that follows agile philosophy. We see the agile footprints in other teams too. For example, at the corporate level, we can see agile philosophy in work at a company called Semco. It's a Brazilian manufacturing company. So under the second generation owner, Ricardo Assembler, the company grew more than 50 times in 20 years. Now what they have done, Semco allowed its workers to set their own production targets. To meet their self-defined targets, they can do overtime on voluntary basis. Profit sharing is practiced down at the factory level. So it's not only for large bonuses for few senior managers, but everybody able to get some profit shares. And also how much profit needs to be shared is, they decide. All the employees decide. The employees also pursue to rationalize and simplify the processes. The company avoids complicated business regulations. In short, Ricardo Assembler, the second generation owner of the company, created a holacratic environment, which the company can essentially work without him. Again, does it familiar? Self-managed teams. So these are all as the roots of the agile, or to work as an agile. So these are some of the things which are must. So as I mentioned earlier, there are many organizations works in agile. In fact, some of them, such as startups, they have to because they don't have too much resource to waste. So if we look at what are the common themes or philosophy of agile or agility, we see 3 elements are in place. One of them is identifying changes fast. The other one is making decisions fast. and the other one is implementing them fast. So in non-IT projects, we take Scrum as a framework, as a basis, and adapt practices around it, where this agile philosophy of these three elements guides us. As I said, for example, we're using Scrum Framework. Let me try to now explain in practically what are some very specific things or very specific actions that what we are looking into. So we use Scrum Framework because it's widely known, it's simple and applicable in all project environments. So there's no need to lose time to teach new methods to team members or company members and so on. With small touches on application side of the team, it can be aligned very easily. So this approach is in line with the third item in the philosophy, as I was saying earlier, implementing things fast. Another thing, in Scrum, for example, now here is how we're adapting the Scrum. In Scrum, their product owner's role is defined as the product vision. They define the product vision, create and maintain the product backlog, prioritize the needs, and oversee the actual product cycle. However, in some large development projects, where it can take up to a couple of years, and maybe it cannot be developed by iterations, then usually this role is being played by multiple managers, and some of those managers are even at the senior level. Now, we still need decisions to be taken fast, but the ultimate decision makers are sitting in the senior management position and they don't have time to available for the project team. So how are we going to solve that issue? So therefore, in addition to product owner, we also create another called voice of product owner or voice of project owner, where the project owner defines a high-level vision and needs, while the voice attend all meetings to assist teams to make decisions when needed on behalf of the project owner and keep an eye on the overall cycle. So therefore, a project owner can be actually at a very high position, but someone is kind of like making the bridge between the team and the project owner. It is, however, very important that the voice of project owner should be indeed the voice, not just fulfilling a title. Another issue compared to IT projects are the software positions of the employees or the location of the employees. The software developers, majority of the time, they sit in front of the computers. They solve all their issues in front of the computers. They work with the screen directly. And they don't even move from their office, or they don't need to move from their chair. However, in some environment, for example, in manufacturing environment, team members, due to their work, they may need to become quite mobile. They may need to travel outside of their office for a couple of days or sometimes even weeks to meet a supplier, for example, to talk about a mold, to talk about some material which they're going to use in their new product and so on. On the other hand, we want team to continue to work. So therefore, in addition to Scrum Master, which I also call the Scrum Master as team captain, as just like in a football, we suggest to appoint another person or select another person. We call this person deputy or vice Scrum Master. Just like in a football game, the team captain leaves the game for whatever the reason in the middle of the game. He takes this, black thing here and then hands over to another person. So they play the similar kind of role. So this person's job, in other words, when the Scrum Master goes away, Scrum Master's responsibilities are taken by this vice Scrum Master or Deputy Scrum Master. Another thing is related with the size of the teams. Now, Scrum teams are being suggested 5 to 10 people, but some large manufacturing projects require to handle by 10 or sometimes even hundreds of people. Well, in this case, workable approach is dividing the project into substreams and then running each of these substreams as agile project. Now, the organization of these project teams could be like a gear wheels. Here are the central teams. They're focusing on strategic and tactical issues, while the sub-teams are conducting that operational work. Now, if one of the sub-gears or sub-project have an issue, then their information, this issue, the problem, information, whatever, that flows to the central team. And then via central team, it disseminates to whole other sub-teams as well. So therefore, everyone knows what's happening very fast. As a result, all team members, to a larger extent, all team members use their time effectively. and brings balance among sub-projects. Another issue is related with the stories. Now, the user stories are simple descriptions of a future told from the perspective of a user or customer who desires new capability. Now, these user stories are typically follow this sample template as yada yada yada, I want da da da, so that blah blah. That's a typical format. But when working on non-IT product development projects, maybe the future or function is the whole project by itself. For example, if I want to change the way of commanding my AC unit, instead of remote control, I want to use maybe my mobile application, mobile phone. So I'm only changing the way of commanding this AC unit. But this project requires changes not only on software, but also on the hardware and industrial design and embedded software side and everything else. So therefore, we have to look at the user story concept more like from stakeholder perspective, since in this project, in such a project, diverse group of people involved in the project. In this example, procurement people probably will be involved because they're going to buy new parts, molds, sensors, and so on. So testing people may need actually some additional devices, additional equipment to test a new product, and so on. So therefore, in non-IT projects, we should be open to consider all stakeholders' needs as part of our stories, not about PBI level, but at story level. Even though they may not be represented in a team, we will actually take those considerations into stories. Also, some of those stories could be quite big. For example, procurement process may involve 2 months. If so, then how are we going to take this 2 months into one sprint, which is a sprint size, let's say 2 weeks? Now, in this case, what we do is that we divide story even further down to task levels, such as define specifications, fill purchase order, order the material, and receive the material. Now, define specifications may be done in the first sprint, while raising the purchase order and ordering the materials may be done in consecutive sprints, where receive materials can be even done in the further sprints. So as you can see that in non-IT projects, frequently we may add tasks into sprints and not only features or functions as in the software projects. Some additional things. By the way, that when you're adding these additional task level things, you should definitely consider the task sequence when we are pulling them into the sprint, because first couple of tasks needs to be done first, and then a couple of tasks needs to be done later on, and so on. So therefore, we should definitely look about like which one is following which one and what is the order, etc. And also, just like in IT projects, that team members are selecting or picking up or pulling the items from the sprint board as they are available, as their capacity is available in that, in that sprint. So therefore, we are not pushing them to all the items or tasks, just like in the regular kind of project or traditional project way. We are let them to decide which they can do, and depending on their own time, etc. In software projects, majority of the time, a functionality can be tested, and if something goes wrong, can be corrected in a single sprint time. Now, here is another issue related with the tests story sizes. In non-IT projects, because it may not be the case. For example, testing a machine part from vibration, heat generation, energy consumption, etc., and confirming the results of specifications may not be completed in a single sprint. For example, we are testing the energy consumption of a machine, and we find out that it is not meeting our specifications. So therefore, engineers are looking at the root reason. And the root reason or root cause for that one could be due to, design of the machine. It could be related with the materials used. It could be due to, electrical parts, sensors which are utilized in this machine, or, relate with the embedded software, or maybe it's combination, some of them or all of them. Now, how do they do the testing? They do the testing and they record and measure the results. And then they check against if it fits with their specifications or not. If not, therefore, they make some changes. Maybe they change material. Maybe they change some changes on the design. Or they change maybe something on the code or software and so on. And then they rerun it again and retest it again, and they measure again. If it doesn't, match the requirements, they do it again, they do it again. So therefore, this process may not finish in a single sprint. So what we do here is that instead of trying to put this one large activity into one sprint because it doesn't fit as naturally, therefore what we do is that we are dividing story into fixed sizes. So therefore we are not sizing the story because we cannot size a story, or whenever we size it, whichever way, it becomes like a very large. Therefore we are dividing story into fixed sizes, whatever the size that we take to fit in this 2 weeks period of time. For example, we ask test engineer in one sprint how many tests you can do. Let's say for sake of discussion, he says, well, about 8 or 9. Okay. Next question we ask, in similar kind of project, what will the maximum number of tests where the satisfactory results you have been achieved? And let's say that he says, based on his experience, around 20-25. Then we divide this testing story, the big testing story, into 3 testing stories. And in the storyboard, we are recording 3 testing stories where each story will have 8 tests. Now, we already know that, and this is how we group, it's like test first, test number 1, test number 2, test number 3. So therefore, in the first story, we are testing test number 1, which is composed of around 8 tests. You remember that, right? And we already know that not all items on the storyboard needs to be completed. Therefore, let's say if the tester finishes his test successfully after 12th test, then what happened is that first sprint, we take the testing group 1, and then we finish this testing group 1 completely. And then on the second sprint, we are taking the second group of tests. But because he completed about 12th test, so therefore, second testing story go to our sprint, but the third test story will never go to any sprint. So in this case, we are transferring unknown story size into known story sizes. As a result, we still keep the team focused on the project. Because as you know, that if we are keeping things larger, it's much easier to lose focus. Another thing is about the combination of the team members. Now, in IT projects, it's very common to have a team composed of, for example, business analyst, UX designer, front-end developers, back-end developers, system integrators, testers, and so on. So they are all around coming from IT world, so they are familiar with the IT environment. However, in non-IT projects, participants are coming from, or they may be coming from diverse backgrounds. Maybe someone from finance, someone from marketing, someone from sales, somebody from HR, someone from engineering, operations, IT, and so on. So a variety of the different ones. So they're not looking and coming from the same environments. So therefore, it takes some time for all this group of people to speak the same project language. For example, their stories could be very high level or very subjectively defined. Or in early sprints, they underestimate the actions or functions, and this may result in undertaking more than what they can do in a single sprint. In my experiences, sometimes in the very, very early sprints, maybe like in the first sprint usually, during the sprint, they cannot complete any action on the SPI. So they just carry on working and working and working, but nothing has been completed. And then when we are questioning during the lessons learned session why this happened like that, well, they're always coming to a point that because they underestimate the size of the stories. Last but not least, they may, regarding with the combination of the team members, they may assume each person will work with the same way as they are. They assume that each person will think in the same way as they are, but it's not true. We know that. But one person, because one person might go very detailed, while the other one is always stay at the very conceptual level. This becomes difficult to define right story with right story size in agreement with the team. So therefore, again, what we are doing is that what we are suggesting is that please allow some time because it's needed. The team doesn't become team very fast. It may require maybe like a couple of sprints. So another issue, during a sprint, as part of regular practice, daily meetings are being conducted. Now, during these meetings, each individual on a regular or normal way, reports on what they have done and what they will do, and if they see any risk or any obstacle. However, in some projects, like doing a benchmark or defining definition of some conceptual issues or activities, whatever, something like large, needs to be completed by small teams collaboratively. Together they have to complete. Therefore, in such a case, instead of asking every individual, what have you done? In this kind of environment, where the small teams are handling an activity or an achievement, it will be better to ask the team, the small team, what has been done on this specific story, what the team is planning to do on this specific story for today, and if there is any risk or obstacle, if they observe on this specific story. So in summary, that if we would like to summarize, and I put this one in a table over there, using familiar approach like Scrum Framework to minimize time loss, etc., that serves to making implementation fast. In addition to product owner, as needed, if you create a role of voice of product owner, that helps to making decisions fast during the sprints. For involving project owner or voice of project owner throughout the whole meetings, that also helps for making decisions fast. Another element is creating a vice or deputy Scrum Master in addition to Scrum Master if the Scrum Master needs to be mobile person. Therefore, that also helps for implementation fast because we keep the team as team. Creating in a large groups, creating central team and sub-team concept, sub-teams, and then linking them with each other like a gear, that helps for identifying changes fast and also making decisions fast. Converting user stories or taking user stories as a stakeholder stories and going into task level, that also helps for identifying changes fast and also implementing the things fast. Transferring those stories where the size may not be known to fixed size stories, just like in the testing example as I provided, that also helps for implementing the project fast or implementing whatever needs in the project fast. And also please allow some time for team to work as a team because they're not coming from the same kind of environment. So they have a different way of thinking, different way of approaching, although the same subject. So therefore, if you allow some time, that helps for identifying changes fast because they got in harmony quite fast, and then also implementing the things quite fast. And also during the daily Scrum, instead of questioning each person, or instead of for each person to tell what they have done, etc., and what they will be planning to do, and if they see any problem, and so on. If we apply this one on the task or in the story level, so therefore we're asking a group of people who needs to work on this story, what have you done, if you see any problem, etc., that also help for implementing the things faster. So I summarize basically what I have learned in managing non-IT projects in Agile way. Again, like I have been working since 2014, so it has been almost 6 years now. And for me, it was quite a journey. We discover new things almost every day. But what I learned is that each project and every project can be work in Agile way. As long as if we stick this Agile philosophy, identifying change fast, making decisions fast and implementing fast. So therefore, it is not important to apply only one specific methodology with specific artifacts and everything else. We can take a lot of things from different parts and we can actually hybrid them together in order to make a better result. So I thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have any question, please don't